What is up, guys? So today we're going to be diving into a new line of plugins, and we're also going to compare it against some of the hard-hitting professional industry standard plugins that are out today. With that said, let's dive into it. So welcome back, Chris here. So like I said, today we're going to be checking out some new plugins. The brand of plugins is called Tuned Plugins. It's a lot of the word plugins in there, but you get what I'm trying to say. Tuned plugins from our favorite guys at Safari Audio that make the Safari Pedals plugins. So you know this stuff is super reliable, very responsive, awesome stuff. But with this all being said, they've gone for a different brand because this line of plugins didn't necessarily match up with the Safari Pedals brand. So they've created a new sub-brand, I guess you could say, which is Tuned Plugins. I should start off by saying this isn't a sponsored video. They did send me the plugins to try out, but there's no money being exchanged here, so everything you're hearing is my honest opinion. Also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button because the support really helps. But anyway, with that aside, let's dive into these plugins. We're working on the big screen today because I couldn't fit all of these plugins onto one window, but you can see what we have here. We've got a auto-tune style plugin, we've got a vocal chain plugin, and we have a reverb plugin. All, as you can see, branded under the Tuned name. I've had a bit of experience with these plugins, and so far they've been pretty good. I would like to compare primarily vocal tune to auto tune. Auto tune is a standard in my workflow. It gets used quite regularly, but auto tune also comes at a price, and a pretty hefty one at that. Whereas this is, sub $100 or pounds or euros, whatever price you're using. But what I'm trying to say is it's pretty affordable in comparison. So could this be the affordable way, entry point you could say, into using some type of auto tune? I know there's the Waves one as well, which I don't own myself, but I've used a little bit, and they all do a similar thing. It's tuning vocals, but I find you get a little bit of a different result out of whichever one you pick. So with that being said, I'd like to test how these hold up. And with that, I also have some demo vocals that I've ripped off Splice. Let's check it out. Let's hear what it sounds like, and we'll dive into all of them at once. So let's go. All the plugins are bypassed. We're going to start with the auto tune, give it a little flick, and then we'll go to the vocal chain, and then lastly try out the reverb. Let's hear how it sounds.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
So straight away, auto-tune's doing its job. It's tuning that vocal. I do hear a little bit of glitches and little pops and whatnot here and there, but otherwise it's very easy to use. There's not too much control. When we go to look at the auto tune, you'll see there's a lot more controls that you have access to and ways you can play with the tune. This is pretty much just simple tune out of the bag. Requires a little bit of tweaking here and there, but not much than what you would normally do. Otherwise, sounding pretty solid. Let's check out the vocal chain and the tuned reverb next. I'm actually going to leave the auto tune on. I'll just keep it pretty light so it's not doing too much crazy stuff. Let's check out this vocal chain.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
Really digging this vocal chain, just playing with it for a few seconds. You could see it's a really quick, smooth process. I like all the controls they have. I wish there was something to battle those S's. I feel like with the air and the compression, you start to get a little bit of distress from those S's. They're starting to poke out quite a bit. Maybe that's something you could do before if you stuck a de-esser on, or maybe deal with it after. But overall, it's a really nice, quick and dirty way to really sculpt your vocal and get a solid sound out of it. I also like the fact you've got your blend mode here, so you can actually do this all in parallel and more just add a side of something. Let's actually just see what that sounds like real quick. I've got the whole preset set. I'm just going to back off the wet dry so we have more of a parallel sound going on.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
Overall sounding pretty clean. I do like the sound of it. But yeah, not much more to say really. Let's check out this reverb and then we'll try some other examples to see how it sounds on other instances. Let's go.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
So I'm digging the reverb so far. Sounds really clean, very easy to use. All the controls I need are right there. We have a little bit of EQ with that body and air control, which I quite like. Always find myself doing a little bit of EQ on the reverb anyway. So this just makes it a bit, quick and easy to really construct your reverb sound, get it in a place that's really nice, and then work off that, which is great. So far, the trifecta of these plugins are pretty decent. I'm liking the sound, but I would like to see how the autotune compares to the Antares autotune, because for me, am I going to be swapping it out in use for this as opposed to using the Antares one? Oh no, but let's see what the differences are. I'm going to turn off the reverb, I'm going to turn off the vocal chain. I should have probably also stated that as we were going through the plugins, I left them on. So left on the autotune, and then I left on the vocal chain, and then when we're seeing the reverb, I left on both of those, more just to sweeten up the sound we're listening to. But for this test, I'm going to leave them all off, including the tune and everything, or maybe I'll start with the tune and then I'll turn it off, put on the Antares one, we can compare the two. So with all that rambling out the way, let's hear the difference. I've got the auto-tune up over here. I can have them side by side. We'll start with the tuned plugins and then go into Antares, and let's hear how it sounds.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are. Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
So we've got two different vibes going on here, I'd say. What I like about the Antares one is that there's a lot of places where I can finesse how I want the retune to act, basically. Like if I want it to be super T-Pain, do the classic, turn it to 0. But if I wanted to dial that back, as much as you could dial back a retime speed of 0, I can always use this flex tune, and that will give me that snappiness, but almost round off the corners a bit, make it a bit more suitable. Whereas on the tuned plugins one, I've got my tune speed, which allows me to really finesse the speed and get more control out of it, but that's about it. Obviously, I can go between transparent and modern, and they do provide two different flavors of it. But what I really like in the Antares one again is that you have these input types. So if the tune isn't necessarily responding like it should, I can always experiment with one of these other input types, and that usually seems to fix it. However, one thing I really like about the Tunes plugin one is this formant control. I actually quite like the sound of it. It's a bit closer to the little altar boy sound with less work because this is just the formant control. Whereas on this, it's got this formant control, but I'm not a huge fan of the sound of it. I think I would rather have this on first and then have little altar boy after it if I was trying to achieve that result. Whereas with the Tune plugins one, I kind of get that all in one. It's a bit of a sacrifice you might have to make, but then it also saves you putting on an extra plugin. So it could actually work in your favor pretty well. So an extra feature about Tune plugins, maybe you noticed it, is that we have reverb on here. Not your average auto-tune kind of effect, but it exists on there. The whole point of these tuned plugins is that they are very much catered for vocals. You can use them however you like, but I find that this is what their general purpose is for. And so with that, I find it actually is all connected pretty well. Like you might use this maybe as a low latency alternative for when you're recording. You've got something with some reverb, you know, a bit of tune, instantly getting a bit of gratification from having that result without absolutely blowing your CPU. When I use Auto-Tune of Antares, that's a pretty hefty plugin on the latency. So either I find myself using the universal audio version, so I can kind of run that low latency mode, or if I'm using the Antares one itself, I might use Auto-Tune Artist or one of these smaller versions of the plugin just to save me, again, a bit more processing power. What I've noticed just looking at the plugins here on the bottom screen, so you guys can't actually see this, is that Auto-Tune has 60.5 milliseconds of latency at 2,670 samples, whereas this vocal tune, 0 samples. So it's latency free. So it's doing a lot less work on your computer, means your sessions will run a lot smoother, which is all great. Between the two of them, there's maybe a slight difference in sound. I think Antares does seem to smooth off the edges a bit. It doesn't sound as glitchy or as rugged. But if you need a quick and dirty auto-tune, for sure, the Tuned plugins one really hits the spot. Now, that's a lot of talking out the way. We haven't even heard the other examples. We've just been playing this one vocal and we're 15 minutes into this video already. So let's check out the other examples and see how the plugins compare. I'm just going to be playing around with them, seeing what they sound like in comparison. And yeah, let's check it out. We'll start with this female vocal I've got here. I'm going to start with all the plugins off and then turn them on one by one.
Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what's it's gonna be. Oh, let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make it mine on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what's it's gonna be. Oh, let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make it mine on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Oh, let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make it mine on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be.
So that's our female vocal. Let's check out the other male vocal we've got here.
You got me in the middle of hating myself a little, treating me like a criminal. I'm losing it all, I'm taking the fall for you. You treated me like a criminal, I'm losing it all for you. You got me in the middle of hating myself a little, treating me like a criminal. I'm losing it all, I'm taking the fall for you. You treated me like a criminal, I'm losing it all for you. You got me in the middle of hating myself a little, treating me like a criminal. I'm losing it all, I'm taking the fall for you. You treated me like a criminal, I'm losing it all for you.
Wowee, so there you go. Last but not least, I'm just going to compare again the Antares Auto-Tune against the Tuned plugins just to see what the difference is. I'm going to leave the vocal chain and the Tuned Reverb on, and we're just going to see what the difference between Auto-Tune, Antares, and the vocal tune of Tuned plugins sounds like. Let's go.
You got me in the middle of hating myself a little, treating me like a criminal. I'm losing it all, I'm taking the fall for you. You treated me like a criminal. I'm losing it all for you. You got me in the middle of hating myself a little, treating me like a criminal. I'm losing it all, I'm taking the fall for you. You treated me like a criminal. I'm losing it all for you.
Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you mine on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you mine on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide. I can make you on mine. Tell me what it's gonna be. Let me take a seat, let's slide.
Alright guys, so there you have it. So how do you feel that vocal tune by Tuned plugins actually held up against the Antares Auto-Tune? I'd love to know in the comment section below, so let's discuss it out. Personally, I like both of them. When it comes to the vocal tune, I think I much prefer the transparent mode. It feels a lot smoother. The modern mode feels like it still needs to be refined slightly. If I want in particular that T-Pain-esque sound of that really hard auto-tune, or maybe like a rap or hip-hop style vocal, then I would probably swing more towards the Antares side. But if I just needed a nice low latency plugin just to give me a bit of feedback or tuning if I'm working with a singer, the vocal tune will most definitely take that spot, because it just saves me any, intense processing on my computer, and I'm not getting too lost with what the controls are really. I'm just setting the key, and forgetting it, just letting it do its thing. Maybe further down the line I might swap it out, but at least during the recording process, keeps my workflow very straightforward, pretty much bash it out and continue going, which is great. The vocal chain and the tuned reverb, I really like them. Again, pretty straightforward. I like that the vocal chain, you can just slap it on maybe your vocal group and just use it as a general type of sound goodizer tool, just something you can slap on everything. And the tuned reverb, I would probably see myself, right now I'm using it on the channel, I would probably see myself using it more as an aux send, so I can just send whatever I need to it. Again, pretty standard reverb. One thing I really would like to do is maybe EQ it with a bit more technicality and a bit more of a surgical approach, as opposed to just using the body and air. There were some mids that I'd really like to pull out, which I would only be able to do that if it was on a parallel send, but otherwise it does the job. Sounds like a really nice vocal reverb, so I've got no complaints there. Obviously, with all these plugins, let me close this one for now, you've got plenty of presets to pick from, which makes it really easy to just go about, pick a preset that might work for you and just move on from there. But otherwise, that's about it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. The support really helps, and thank you to anyone who's already done so. Once again, I've been Chris Vella, and I'll see you guys on the next one.